before I get into this video, I just want to introduce myself. So my name is Michaela. I am a 17-year-old high school senior now. I was a junior, but now I'm going to senior year. And I am half white and I'm half black. And yeah, so my dad is American and he's Irish, and my mom is Brazilian and she's black. Today we are going to be talking about the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Before I get into all the things I'm going to be getting into in this video, I want to grab your attention and let you guys know that I have some resources in my description of ways that you can help and more about this movement, so make sure to check those out. So what is the Black Lives Matter movement? I am going to the Black Lives Matter website. So in their about section it says hashtag Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murder. Black Lives Matter Foundation Incorporated is a global organization in the US, UK, and Canada whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. By combating and countering acts of violence, creating space for black imagination and innovation, and centering black joy, we are winning immediate improvements in our lives. Okay, and I'm gonna read a little bit from their what we believe section. So it says, we've committed to struggling together and to imagining and creating a world free of anti-blackness where every black person has the social, economic, and political power to thrive. Okay, so I remember when this movement started, and I don't know how old I was, but I know that I was at my old school in grade school, I'm pretty sure, maybe 5th, 6th grade, and I remember the response to it was really bad. People had a lot of misconceptions about the movement, which I don't understand because the hashtag was never Black Lives Matter only. It never said that. That's not what the movement means at all, and let me just clear that up in case any of you guys are confused about that. Black Lives Matter does not mean that black lives only matter. That is not in the hashtag. That is not what it means. There's just a lot of misconceptions around that. What it really means is Black Lives Matter too. They matter as well as white lives. They matter as well as other lives. That's the first thing that I just want to clarify. It does not mean only, it means too. Let's talk about All Lives Matter, you know, that hashtag. That was one of the biggest responses that I remember people would say in response to the Black Lives Matter. And the reason why saying All Lives Matter just completely defeats the point is not because that statement is not true. Black Lives Matter is not saying that all lives don't matter. It is not saying that. If you think about it, what that saying is saying, it's taking away the focus from the black lives, which is why this movement started. The point of the movement is to focus on these lives because they're not getting as much of an attention in the media. They're not being valued as much as white lives. So the problem with saying all lives matter is it's kind of erasing that blackness part. It literally is. Like, the hashtag literally takes the word black out of it and says all. It's so ironic because saying all lives matter, that is exactly what Black Lives Matter believes. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is that it's trying to focus on this one race's lives that are being taken away and being lost and murdered, and trying to focus on saying, hey, this is happening right now and people are not caring enough about it. It's not getting the same attention that it would get if it was a white person. And one quote that I think sums it up is, people weren't saying all lives matter until people said Black Lives Matter. And I feel like that kind of captures the essence of why it's a problem, but it is kind of difficult to explain. I hope that I cleared it up a little bit. So something I've been thinking about recently is, if George Floyd hadn't been murdered by those policemen, how long would it have taken for people to realize how serious this is? It is so unfortunate that it had to take a black man's murder for this whole movement to happen. It's terrible that it has to get to that point for people to wake up, really. But I wonder, like, how long would it have been? You know, if that did not happen, if that wasn't captured on video, if it didn't blow up the way that it blowed up, when would this uprising have started? You know, would it have been 10 years? Would it have been 20 years? Would it have been 100 years? And that is what scares me the most. I don't know when this would have happened. And another question that I ask is, all these people that are talking about this movement, spreading awareness, fighting for the cause, where were they when the movement first started? Where were they in 2013? Where were they in 2015? Where were they when Trayvon Martin got murdered? That is where I'm kind of confused and kind of scared. I think it's really, really good that people are speaking up now, that this movement has blown up the way that it's blown up. I think it's good that people are talking about it now, but I am concerned of people are caring right now But where were they then? When this whole movement first started, it became a joke. People started being like, orange lives matter. People started saying grape lives matter. Like anything object lives matter. It literally became a joke. And I remember this when I was in grade school. But, you know, that's the past. You can't change the past. And I think it's good that it's happening now rather than later. And some people also have said, you know, why now? You know, couldn't have waited a little bit later. You know, why during a pandemic? Like, are you kidding me? Like, 2020 is so horrible. Or, like, really? And my response to that is, it is hard. You know, there is a ton of things going on, and I get that. But I honestly think that it is so much better that it is happening now than any time later, because this needs to be talked about. The sooner that people talk about it, the sooner that these conversations are being had, the sooner we can fight to hopefully change and get a solution. Okay, another thing I want to touch on is my expectation when it started back up again, I'll say, when it started to get the media's attention, the beginning of June. So when I first saw the posts of George Floyd's murder and the hashtag saying, you know, justice and Black Lives Matter and all these different things, when I saw that kind of reach the top of the media's attention again, I honestly thought that it would only last a couple of days. I thought, oh yeah, you know, people are going to be posting this for a weekend and then it'll just die down, you know. And I'm not saying that because it's not an important thing to, you know, get justice for that. I'm not saying that it didn't deserve the attention that it's been getting, but I really was thinking of last time. I was thinking, yeah, you know, last time people were saying this and then it just got backlash. It just got thrown on the rug. People just didn't care. That's what I remember. So I was thinking that the same response would happen this time. So when people started posting about it, like a ton of people, like people that I never expected posting about it, I was really shocked, because it got so much support from the internet community and just people, and it got so big, and it's still so big, that it really blew my expectations out of the water. And it is so beautiful to see people coming together. If it affects you, you know, like if you're a person of color, if you're Black, you're most likely gonna speak about it more because you have a connection to it, you know. And I think that's kind of just naturally how things are. And so for me to see so many white people be posting about this movement and trying to affect change and trying to learn, I really didn't expect that, you know, because a lot of people, they just think, well, you know, if it doesn't affect me, I'm not gonna care. And I see that all the time. You know, one example that I could talk hours about is Brandy Melville. People that are not affected by that store, people that can fit into their clothing and, you know, well, I can fit into their clothing, so I don't really care about, you know, that other people can't fit. That's the mentality that I'm used to people having. And I thought, you know, in this case, it would be the same thing, that people just would be like, oh, you know, it doesn't affect me. Like, I'm not gonna get into politics, you know. One quote that I really like, that I've been seeing on Instagram a lot, is, it's not politics, it's human rights. You know, it's not a political issue, it's a human rights issue. And I think that's true. I think it really is a human rights issue, especially in America, you know, because it has lasting impact. It affects families, affects people. It literally takes people's lives away. You know, I mean, how can you say that that is political? It is a human rights issue. I think what can be political is, how should we address this problem? How should we fix this problem? I think, you know, trying to think, how should we change this? That, you know, there's different ways. People think we should do this, people think we should do that. That I can get. But the situation needs to be changed regardless of what you believe. You know, it needs to change. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about the peaceful protests. So my opinion about the protests, honestly, I've been blown away by the amount of people that have been at the protests. I've seen pictures that streets are filled. Like, I don't know, when I first saw those photos, I was blown away, because you might have seen maybe a few photos like that last time in 2013, but completely different, like completely different. The way that people are reacting now is so different than then that it really blows my mind, but it's such a good thing that people are reacting this way now. I would say the majority of the protests are peaceful. I think that needs to be like fact, like that is a fact. The majority of the protests are peaceful. There was one in my city that literally the entire day was peaceful until like the last 2 hours. It got violent. And when it got violent, then the entire protest of those 7-8 hours that it was peaceful, completely just forgotten. Just the headline says violent protest, violent, and just no mention of peacefulness. Now, my opinion is, it's hard. You know, in an ideal world, peaceful protest would do the trick, right? In an ideal world, peaceful protest would change things quickly, perfectly. You know, if it was an ideal world, right? Peaceful protest would work 100%. but it's not an ideal world. I think people need to realize that. You know, if it was an ideal world, of course people would want peaceful protests to work and to 100% work, to not have to do any violence or anything. But the thing is, it's not an ideal world. It's not. And when you look back to civil rights and all those movements, yes, there were tons of peaceful protests. But if there weren't the violent ones, in my opinion, I don't know if the whole civil rights thing, if that would have happened as soon as it did. I don't know. I am not advocating for violence. I don't think that we should be using violence for this because it just makes things worse, because people are going to put more stereotypes on Black people, and it just is going to cause more problems than solving things. That is my opinion. I don't think that violence is the answer. One quote that I do want to mention is, this thing I think summarizes kind of what I feel. So it says, "You keep saying it's horrible that an innocent Black man was killed, but destroying property has to stop." And then it says, "Try saying it's horrible that property is being destroyed, but killing innocent Black men has to stop." And then at the bottom it says, "You're prioritizing the wrong part." This just says it so well. You know, no one's saying that destroying property and businesses isn't bad, but to compare that and put more emphasis on that and say, oh, this has to stop, but you're not saying this has to stop to killing innocent Black people, that's kind of where it's like, wow. People that are saying that, those priorities of those people, that's where you realize that's really messed up. We're not saying that that's not terrible. You know, people have worked so hard for their businesses. We're not saying that that's not terrible. But to even compare that to the loss of a person's life, you can't. You cannot do that. Okay, and then one last thing I want to say about the whole violence. One theory that I have, and it's not explaining everyone, but one theory that I'm thinking of is the news loves to cover negative news over positive news. That's just a fact. And what I'm thinking to myself is, if you're only covering the protests if they're violent, you know, like if they become violent for a minute and then, you know, the entire protest is considered violent, and that's the only thing that you're talking about, wouldn't that incite people to do more violence? You know, like that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like, if the media is only going to show the violent protests and like going to put more emphasis on that, wouldn't some people think, oh, if I start a little bit of violence in this protest, it's going to make the news, it's going to be talked about more? That's just kind of something that I'm thinking about, you know, like the media needs to be promoting the peaceful protests as much as the violence. You know, the peaceful protests even more, because the peaceful ones are happening much more. Because these people know, oh, if I start violence, it's going to make headlines. It's going to get more attention. More people are going to get awareness. People are going to take us more seriously. You know, like, why can't people take us more seriously when we're being peaceful? You know, why can't the media put more coverage, take us more seriously when we're being peaceful, right? Like, that's just one way I've been looking at it. Okay, so another thing I want to talk about is systemic racism. It's hard to talk about this because it's not something that you can quantify. You can't measure, oh yeah, like how much systemic racism is there today? You know, is there 2? Is there 3? Like, you can't quantify it, so it's a hard, complex concept to explain. But one way that I would say is a huge thing about it is economically. Think about the starting points. America was started in 1776, right? So we had white people, you know, ruling the country and everything, and they're making money, right? And then you have the generational wealth, right? You know, we definitely have certain families that have the last name Washington. We certainly have certain families that date back all the way to those people in 1776, right? White families. So if you think about it, right, with the whole generational wealth, if those people, they, you know, had money and making money since 1776, of course they're gonna have more money than Black families that their descendants were slaves that could not make money until they were free. So when you think about that, it makes a lot more sense, right? Like, their starting point was a lot earlier than Black families. So of course they're gonna have more money generationally. But the thing is that affects everything. Economic equality, economic injustice affects everything. Housing, schooling, getting into college, you know, having access to opportunities, right? Like, a student that's in high school that is white might have enough money to hire an SAT tutor that they can pay $1,000 per session to get the best SAT tutoring, right? And then they get a $1,600 on the SAT and they get into college, right? Whereas a Black family, they might not have as much money and they can't afford that tutor, and then their kid gets, you know, $1,300, right? So that's kind of one thing, you know, that you have to realize. And with the housing, I mean, literally with the housing, there is this thing called redlining, where certain communities were literally redlined so that they knew, oh yeah, Black families live here, so we're gonna charge less for these houses. With real estate, realtors literally don't show Black people as many houses as white people. That is a fact. And if you see white suburban neighborhoods, their house values are so much more expensive, whereas the closer you get to a black neighborhood, prices drop. And then the wealth gap. So what I said about this is I said systemic racism is real. Change the structures. There won't fully be racial equality without economic equality. That's my belief. The houses in black neighborhoods are worth far less than in white neighborhoods. This means that these neighborhoods have less money to pay taxes, which means less money to improve their schools, their communities, etc. And it makes sense, right? Like if a black community, a black town has less money, like if their house values are not as expensive, they don't have as much money to pay taxes. They won't have as much money to put into their schools. Like, and it just builds off of that. But yeah, so this post says that white families have substantially more wealth than black families. It says the median net worth of white households is about 10 times the median net worth of black households. So the median net worth of black households is $17,600. Whereas the white median is $171,000. With less money to go towards educational systems, that means fewer opportunities for black students to get into elite level schools. If the education systems were equal in both black and white neighborhoods, many black and other people of color students wouldn't have to travel over 1 hour to go to a better quality school in a white suburban town. My city actually has this certain system where they send inner city kids to white suburban town schools. And those, oh my gosh, I have a friend that goes to one of those schools and it is literally an hour away from that friend, and an hour away to go to school, you know, just to get a better education. I mean, kids should not have to travel an hour away, you know, just because of where they live. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if your town has more money, they're gonna have better schools. That is just true. These white towns are gonna have more money than majority people of color or black towns. Okay, also with redlining, so I was talking about this before, but I didn't really explain it. So this post from Instagram, it says that redlining is the systemic denial of various services to residents of specific neighborhoods or communities. It was outlawed in the 60s, but the practice and its effects never really went away. And then it says, for criminal justice, black people are 20% more likely to be sentenced to jail time and 20% longer sentences than whites for similar crimes. And then it says that blacks make up 13% of the nation's population, yet 40% of the prison population. I am just like, if we make up 13%, like that's a really small number. You know, we're not even in the 20s. If we make up 13%, how is it that 40% of the prison population is black? You know, are you really gonna just tell me, oh, that's because black people are more violent, which is an extremely racist thing to think and say, by the way? Are you gonna just say, oh, that's just how it is? No, like those numbers just tell you that there's a problem. It just proves that there's a problem. I'm not saying that there are not black people who do crimes. Like literally every single race has people that do crimes. How does that even happen? You know, 13% and then 40% of the population is black. Like, doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. This other post that I put was talking about school segregation. I remember my dad saying that the school that I went to, my preschool through 8th school, he went there and it was all white students, you know, because it was back in the day, all that stuff. And I was like, oh wow, like that's in the past, right? Like there's no schools like that. But my school, there's literally like, I don't even think there's 10 students at my school of like 400 kids. Yeah, so this article says school segregation in America is as bad today as it was in the 1960s. Now, one thing I want to say just before this is there isn't a way to completely make the schools equal if you think about it, because only 13% of the 300 million people in America are black. So there really isn't a way to make it completely equal. Like, it would make sense to me if like most schools were mostly white, but if you have like mostly black schools and then mostly white schools, that's where I'm kind of like, that's a little bit weird. And then also with this post, I said, tell me why, if black students are willing to go to schools over an hour away from them. My school still looks like this photo, and the photo has this one black girl in the back of the classroom. Even seeing a classroom with one black student in it is a rarity at my school. It's not just my school. There are, honestly, it's most private schools. So I'm not trying to like dig at my school or anything. It really is a lot of private schools. But yeah, that is kind of something I think about because I live right next to a city and my school really is not that far from the city. Maybe like 20 minutes, which I mean, compared to an hour is not that bad. So I wondered to myself like, okay, you know, there are black students here. There are kids of color in the city, like around, right? So I'm thinking to myself, why aren't there more kids of color in my school? Why aren't there more black kids in my school, right? Like if these kids, if one of my friends goes to a school in a suburban white town, which my school is in, over an hour away, why are there not more in my school? Why? Oh wait, I know why. Because tuition is literally tens of thousands of dollars. Oh yeah, I know why. Because at least for my school, they don't guarantee a bus. If you live in the city, right, you have to kind of just depend on if your parents can drive you, right? There is a bus, and I go in the bus to my school, but they don't guarantee you that it'll be in your town. And also you have to pay for that, which is an additional like $2,000–$3,000. So that's pretty much the reason. Keep in mind, my school is about 25 to 30 minutes from the city. And the reason that I say that is because the closer to a city, usually, the more people of color, the more black people there are. So then I say, it's not, oh, there are no blacks in the towns near that school. No. It's that those families are not able to afford tuition, and even with a scholarship or financial aid still cannot afford it because it is so expensive. And then I also say, or maybe it's simply that my school cannot guarantee them an affordable transportation option. I'm not going to be even guaranteed that the bus stop is going to be close to where I live, and I'm not even going to be guaranteed that it's going to be affordable at all. Like, it is literally $2,000 to $3,000. That is adding to the tuition. You know, so it makes sense. People can't afford that. That is so expensive, you know, and especially with the different starting points of the wealth gap, it makes sense. So, and then I said, of course, it's not just my school, it's really any private school that has tuition, which, may I add, can reach up to $50,000. By the time you're done with school, you could buy a house. It is just, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so another story that I want to mention is my town has 27,000 people, of which 3,000 are black. And it's really weird because my town is considered like super diverse. It's 3,000 people, which is like so, yeah, but that's how it is. Like, 3,000 is considered super diverse in the area that I am in. But yeah, so I say that 3,000 are black. So how is my public school's population 50% black, right? Yeah, that's the thing. So in my town that is considered super diverse, our public school, the diversity is actually really, really good. Like, there's like a 50-50 kind of percent. And you wonder, oh, like how's that the case, right? Because you said that there's definitely not as many black people in that town as white people. Here is why. So this is because there are many private schools in and around my town. Tons of Catholic schools, charters, you name it. Basically, when it comes to the 7th and 8th grade to high school, many of the white students in my town are sent to these private schools, decreasing the white to black ratio at the public schools. So it makes sense, right? Like, if you have all these white families that, you know, just because of the wealth gap, have a lot more money, you know, there's tons of private schools around us. It makes sense, right? Like, when you go to the 7th and 8th grade or high school, tons of these families are going to say, oh, I'm going to send my kid to this Catholic school. I'm going to send my kid to this private school. So then when you see, oh wow, the elementary school, like, it's really not diverse, and the middle school, it's really not diverse, and then you see the high school, oh wow, it's so diverse, it's because all these white students go to the private schools, right? So it decreases the amount of white kids, and then it becomes more equal. And, you know, it's not just my town, this happens to a lot of towns where there's private schools around them. And yeah, so I don't know, it's kind of just hard, because especially with my school, I'm thinking, like, I know that there's tons of black students around me that would love to go to my school and have the resources and all that stuff, and it's money. It's money and it's transportation. So another thing I want to talk about is the problem with saying I don't see color / I'm colorblind. So here is another Instagram post that kind of explains what I feel and just really explains the problem with that saying. It says, I see no color is not the goal. I see your color and honor you. I value your input. I will be educated about your lived experiences. I will work against the racism that harms you. You are beautiful. Tell me how to do better. That is the goal. So the problem with saying I don't see color, I get the good intention behind it, but you can't just say that people don't look different. We do have different skin tones, you know, like a black person's skin tone is different than a white person's, and that's a fact. And you can't just say, yeah, like, we're just gonna like erase that, like, I'm colorblind. By saying that, that is basically saying these different colors, that is the problem. Being different, we need to get rid of that. We can't be different. Like, there is so much wrong with that statement that it is very scary, because you're basically saying that color is the problem, and it's not. The problem is not realizing that the color of your skin tone does not determine who you are. The color of your skin tone does not determine that you're more valuable than someone else. What we need, what the goal should be, is, wow, black people are just as valuable as white people. Wow, you know, like, I see your color, like that post said, I see your color and I value. You are just as important as anybody else. We need to see each other for identities and who we are, and, you know, not erase people's race. The goal should be, yes, we have different cultures, we have different skin tones, but that's okay. That should be the goal, you know, that's okay. I've talked about a lot, but in summary, just to kind of summarize my thoughts, I texted someone that I know that had a question about this whole movement and my thoughts on it, and I said, I think that it's good that people are speaking up now and talking about it, even though it is a difficult topic. I think conversation and understanding is needed for real change. And also another thing I want to say is, even, you know, as crazy and hectic and emotionally exhausting, and just every emotion, you know, and just everything that I've been feeling and other people have been feeling because of this movement, I honestly think that more good is going to come out of this movement as a whole than bad. And that's a great thing, you know, like that is a success. And another thing that I said, if this movement saves at least one Black person's life in the future, if they were stopped by a cop or cops, then I would feel that this movement would be a complete success, because life is priceless and irreplaceable, whereas buildings and businesses can be replaced and rebuilt. The destruction of both is terrible, of course, but a person's life is much, much more valuable and deserving of respect than anything else in our world. And I think that is kind of the essence of the movement. That's kind of just what the main point should be. Everyone deserves life. No one's life should be taken away from them. And another quote that I want to just kind of end on with Instagram is, even guilty people don't deserve to have their life taken away. And it's true, you know, no one deserves to have their life taken away. So yeah, so that's pretty much the end of this video. I hope that you guys got something out of this, learned something, maybe your perspective changed a little bit. But yeah, leave down below in the comments your thoughts on this issue, anything that you have been feeling. I really would love to have a conversation with you guys down in the comments. But yeah, so that's pretty much the end of this video. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in my next one.